My name is Charles I Halt. I'm a retired Air Force colonel. What happened to me? I had a very unusual experience in December 1980 at RAF Bentwaters, which is in East Suffolk, England. We had an incident that took place over 3 nights. The first night, our security police thought they saw a downed aircraft off the base. They responded and confronted a strange craft on tripod-like legs, about 9 feet on a side, smooth, metallic. It had writing similar or markings similar to hieroglyphics on it. They had some type of an interface with the craft. Perhaps one went aboard it, we don't know. They had 45 minutes of lost time, and we don't know all the details exactly what happened. The following night there was another incident where one of the security police officers actually had a nervous breakdown and threw her gun down because of a confrontation with something. We never found out exactly what. The third night I was called out to investigate, and there were objects in the sky. There was a glowing object in the forest. It moved about between the trees. It moved out into the farmer's field beyond the forest. It glowed. It appeared to be dripping something like molten metal. It silently exploded into 5 white objects and disappeared. We went out into the field to investigate and noticed objects in the sky. There were 3 to the north. They were elliptical with multicolored lights. They moved in a synchronous pattern together as though they were doing a grid search. They turned from elliptical to full circles while we watched. They stayed in the sky for a long period of time. I tried to have them identified by air defense radar and the air traffic control tower, but they told me they didn't see anything. I found out years later they did see something, but they didn't want to talk about it or reveal it. There were 2 objects to the south, one of which came overhead at high speed, sent down a laser-like beam at our feet. It illuminated the ground in a circle about 10 to 12 inches in diameter, and as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared. The other object to the south flew over Bentwaters base and sent down beams similar to the one we saw in or near the weapons storage area. The objects remained in the sky for approximately 3 to 4 hours. We got tired, cold, wet, and hungry and went back to the base. We never found out exactly what they were. I had carried my pocket recorder with me, and I made a tape recording, which I'm going to play at the program tomorrow. I was asked to write a memo, which I did. I sent it through the liaison officer to the British Ministry of Defense. They filed it away and did nothing. Years later, a copy came out and became public knowledge. After the tape and the memo became public knowledge, my life changed for a while. I was hounded half to death by the press and the media. Since then, it's quieted down, and I've retained my normal life, I guess is the best way to put it. I occasionally come to events such as we're having today here. I'm about done with doing that. I've about talked myself out. Well, I can tell you, the air traffic controllers saw it go across their 60-mile screen, which covers a 60-mile area, not as a blip, blip, blip like normal when this radar sweeps. It went across as a streak in 3 or 4 seconds, which means 3,000 to 4,000 miles an hour. Twice it did that. It came back by the air traffic control tower. They visually watched it. It was growing orange. They watched it go over into the forest where we were and disappear into the forest where we were. The people in the weapons storage area also saw it. So there were multiple witnesses in at least 3, if not 4 locations, all saw it.
You expect that nowadays, if anything happens again like this would be open to the press and the people, or still would have a cover-up?
I suspect it would be covered up, but I can't guarantee you that. It's just a strong suspicion from other cases I've heard and other people that I've talked to. The young airmen that were involved with me were all told to be quiet, not to talk about it, and threatened. I was not threatened, probably because of my position in rank, and because I kept my mouth shut. Everything. I worked for the DODIG. My boss worked for the Secretary of Defense, who works for the President. Before I did the first program, I was approached by NBC, Unsolved Mysteries, that's an American program you may have heard, to do a program. So I went to the DODIG and said, I've been approached by Unsolved Mysteries, because I used to watch it occasionally, to do a program. He said, what's it about? So I sat down for an hour and a half or 2 hours and went through it all. He says, do it. So I did it. Interesting.
This is an interesting one. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Project Gwen, Ground Wave Emergency Network. In a nuclear war, the concept was that airbursts would be used to take out all conventional communication. But there was a project being run at the time in a lot of American bases, which some people have thought, like HART, might have a psychological effect on. So the question is, was Project Gwen being run at Bentwaters at the time?
Not to my knowledge, ever. No. A couple things I failed to mention, I just happen to think of. I have statements here too. The air traffic controllers at Bentwaters have come forward. Robert Hastings, who wrote the book UFOs, and Newt managed to get them to talk, and I have signed sworn statements from them. They watched, the night I was in the forest, they watched the UFO go across their 60-mile scope, on the Bright 2 we called it, in 2 seconds, across a 60-mile scope. You figure out the speed. It came back across the scope in about 2 seconds. It buzzed the tire, the air traffic control tire, and sat near the water tower, this big rectangular water tower, not too far from the air traffic control tower, and then went into the forest where we were. The on-duty cop in the tire in the weapons storage area, we had a 40-foot tire out there with the controlled sensors on the fences and things, saw it too, saw it go into the forest. There was a communications man out there working, and he went ballistic. He saw it. I have his statement. The people on the ground in the weapons storage area saw it. 2 of them managed to get a pair of 12-power binoculars, and they claimed that the white objects we saw were triangular. I have their statements. In other words, 2 air traffic controllers saw it in the tower. Watersham picked it up. The tower in the WSA saw it. People on the ground in the WSA saw it. We saw it. So all these different locations saw it. So it's pretty well established that something did happen. What's your next question?
The next one, you kind of answered. Are there any plans for everyone involved, by which I take it as Warren means Larry and Jim and John and yourself? Any plans for you to get together around the table to try and sort out the discrepancy? Why
do I need to get together with someone that's a fraud? He's threatened to sue me. He sent me a letter and said, I'm going to sue you if you don't keep it up. Sue me. Let's go to court. Let's take a deposition from a whole bunch of people, like I tell you, including his 2 ex-wives, and see what happens.
This one's James de Gitz is in here. I think it's his real name, because that's a hero of a book by Harry Harrison, isn't it?
Harry Harris, my old buddy.
Anyway, I would like to know, James, about the tunnels and the manhole covers in the forest.
I have no knowledge of anything in the forest other than what happened to me, and I've been out there half a dozen times. We have, as I said earlier, we have no known. Now, there were some interesting things done in the base during World War II as far as airfield lighting, with fuel. The munitions were supposed to be buried under the runway over there, so if it's necessary if there were an invasion to destroy the airfield, but I don't know of any underground facilities whatsoever, other than a sub-basement in the intelligence building, and there may have been something else like that. But if we had a large underground facility like that, there have been several things. You needed pumps to keep the water out, it's almost below sea level. You needed ventilation. There's a lot of things you needed. And we would have known that. We paid the darn electric bills and the water bills.
Dave Boardman. Yeah, Dave Boardman. Got a couple of interesting questions. The decision to award John Burroughs a disability pension as a result of possible exposure to UAP radiation in the forest, as cited in Project Condign, should represent a dramatic turning point in the case. However, rather predictably, the matter has received little media attention. What are your views, Colonel, on the significance of this?
I have doubts that John Burroughs' physical problems have any relation to what happened in the forest. However, that being said, there are some issues. John Burroughs and Jim Peniston, as well as Larry Warren, cannot get their medical records. And I'll tell you a very good story. In 1990, I did an organizational inspection of NSA along with other people. That's the National Security Agency. The day or two before, Larry Warren called me. We were sort of on speaking terms then. I've just given up talking to him. And he said, I'm going to the Washington Post. I'm going to blast them. They're holding my medical records. And I have good reason to believe they were. He tried every which way to get them. He had several influential senators and former attorney general and everybody else trying to get them. And it came down to the personnel center at Randolph and the people at St. Louis, the military records center, all said NSA had them. So, knowing that he's going to go make a big noise to the world about the NSA, and we're doing an inspection, I said to Colonel Bill Shea, who was my inspector heading up the team, I said, you tell your counterpart when you get out there that Larry Warren's about to make a lot of noise and maybe embarrass them. So they prepared for it. Fair enough. So Bill Shea goes out and tells his counterpart, this is 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. By 10 o'clock, I got a call from the chief of the compromise branch at NSA. And he introduced himself. I have his name and his phone number. He's probably long since retired, but he said, what's this about Warren? So I told him a little bit. And I said, well, what do you know? He said, nothing. We talked for a while. And I realized he knew more than I did. Now, back to John Burroughs and Jim Peniston. They've had issues getting treated at the VA. Whether it's related to whatever happened in the forest or not, I don't know. I can't say. I'm not a doctor. But Gordon Williams and I both wrote very detailed, strong letters to the VA, and they relented, and they are treating them. So they are getting treated. Does it relate? I don't know.
Another question here, which is called speculation. It's been announced there are further MOD files being processed and released at the moment. despite assurances that all the MOD files on the matter had previously been placed in the public domain, do you have any views on the possible content of these files and their potential value?
None whatsoever, but I can tell you something interesting, because my buddy Nick Pope did a lot of research on this, and documents are missing from the exact time frame that we had the issues of Bentwaters. Everything before and after that's still there. He did a lot of research. Most of you know who Nick Pope is. So, something funny. I'd love for everything to come out. I have no idea what, other than my memo, I have no idea what they have. I don't think they ever responded. They got caught flat-footed and have egg on their face. That's the only thing I can say. They never expected it to come out either, I'm sure. Well, their people did it, so. You know the diameter of the Earth, rather the circumference of the Earth, is just about 26,000 miles. The Earth rotates every 24 hours, doesn't it? Which means if you're on the equator, you're traveling over 1,000 miles an hour. Now here in England, you're probably only doing 800 miles an hour. Do you have any effect? No, because the atmosphere and everything is moving with you. There may be some way that these, whatever they are, have found a way to integrate themselves with their craft. Because I've pulled 7 Gs, and let me tell you something, even with a G suit on, your vision goes down to next to nothing, and if you're lucky, you stay, you know, you can understand what's going on, you don't pass out, it's just something else. There's certainly a possibility of that. Something else that struck me after reading the book and talking to some very knowledgeable people. Everybody in the world in different places talks about Yeti, Bigfoot, the abominable snowman. Has anybody ever found one physically, or bones, or any positive evidence other than footprints? There have been a lot of cases where UFOs have been in the area. Now, I'm not saying Bigfoot or reptilian animals or funny dogs or elves or whatever come from UFOs, but there's some strange connection in some way with some of that. Who knows? One other thing I was going to tell you. Actually, I got part of that from Carl Fenty. If you ever want to read a good book, it's UFOs in Water. That's a subject that's never been touched by anybody prior to Carl getting involved. But I guess the best thing I can say is there's no doubt in my mind that we are not alone. That's all I can say. I don't know what I saw. I wish I knew. I'll probably never know, and you may never know either. So, yes, I think there are some people that know, but you won't get to them. Mr. Obama won't get to them. Other presidents have tried hard. Jimmy Carter supposedly had an experience. Bill Clinton tasked his chief of staff, told him when he came into office, there's 2 things I want to know. Told Warren Hubble. The gentleman got in a little trouble later, but he apparently did a good job at the beginning. He said, I want to know who killed Kennedy, and I want to know what the UFOs are real. And when he left office, he said, I never had an answer to either one of them. So I leave you with that.